Before you hear what I'm about to tell you, I need you to slow down for a moment. Put whatever you're doing aside, because this isn't a story about gadgets or greed, not really. It's a story about how the people who are supposed to love you can learn to use that love against you, quietly, carefully, and with a smile on their face the whole time. Ask yourself this before we go any further. If someone you trusted handed you something that looked like kindness, would you even think to question it? My name is Walter. I'm 63 years old and I live in Decatur, Georgia, in the same brick ranch house I bought with my own two hands the year my son turned 3. I spent 31 years as a pipe fitter at a commercial construction company, the kind of work that leaves calluses on your palms and a permanent ache in your lower back that no chiropractor can fully fix. I retired 2 years ago, not because I wanted to, but because my right knee made the decision for me. Retirement looks different than people imagine. Some mornings it's peaceful. Coffee on the back porch, birds in the sweet gum tree, no alarm, no foreman radio crackling at 6 in the morning. But other mornings, it's just quiet. The kind of quiet that reminds you how much of your identity was tied to a job you didn't think you loved until it was gone. My son Marcus is 38. He's a project manager for a tech company out of Atlanta. Good salary, sharp dresser, the kind of man who owns an actual leather briefcase and uses it. His mother, my ex-wife Denise, raised him mostly. We weren't close for a long time, but the last few years, after I retired, he started coming around more. Monthly dinners, Sunday phone calls. Once or twice he helped me navigate something on my computer when I couldn't figure out the new system the bank switched to. I appreciated it. More than I said out loud. When a man gets older and the world starts moving faster than he does, having someone reach back for you matters. Last December, he drove down from Atlanta 3 days before Christmas. Said he wanted to bring my gift early, before the holiday chaos. He set a small box on my kitchen table, wrapped in silver paper, red ribbon, and watched me open it with that particular kind of patience that belongs to people who already know what's inside. It was a smartwatch. Black face, slim band, expensive looking. The kind you see advertised during football games. He took it out of my hands gently and showed me how to put it on. It tracks your heart rate, Dad, your steps, your sleep. You've got that blood pressure situation, and I worry. He smiled when he said it, easy and warm. It'll give me peace of mind knowing you're okay. I looked at it on my wrist. It felt lighter than I expected. I told him I appreciated it, and I meant it. That evening we ate at the kitchen table, talked about his job, about the holidays, about nothing in particular. When he left, he hugged me at the door. I stood there in the cold for a moment after his taillights disappeared, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time, like maybe I still had somebody. I wore the watch every day for the first 3 weeks. Didn't think much about it. It buzzed when I stood up too long, reminded me to breathe during the news, which I thought was a small joke the universe was playing on me. I showed it to my neighbor Cecil at the mailbox one morning. Cecil is 71, retired from the post office, and has an opinion about everything. He looked at it the way he looks at everything. Sideways, skeptical, arms crossed. He asked me who gave it to me. I told him Marcus. He nodded slowly and said, "You know those things connect to the internet, right?" I said I figured as much. And you know what connects to the internet can be read by whoever set it up. I told him he sounded like one of those people who wore a tinfoil hat. He didn't laugh, just said, "I'm just asking, Walt. You know for sure what he put on it when he set it up." I didn't answer that. Went inside, told myself Cecil had too much time on his hands. But that evening I sat in the kitchen and looked at the watch on my wrist for a long time. Marcus had set the whole thing up on his phone before he put it on me. I never saw what screens he clicked through, what settings he turned on, what accounts he linked. I hadn't thought to ask. The next morning, a Saturday, I drove to a phone repair shop on Candler Road. Small place, two young men behind a glass counter. I told them I had a smartwatch, and I wanted to know what it was sharing and with who. The taller one, couldn't have been 25, took the watch and connected it to something behind the counter. He was quiet for a while. Then he called the other one over. They spoke in low voices. Then the taller one set the watch on the counter in front of me like he was setting down something that had weight. "Sir," he said, "this watch is linked to another account, not just for health sharing. It's got location tracking turned on, full time, and there's a third-party app installed that we don't usually see on these. It logs ambient audio in 30-second intervals when it detects a certain volume threshold, like conversation." I stared at him. "Meaning," I said, "meaning someone with access to that account can see where you are and can hear parts of what you say when you're close enough to your phone." The shop smelled like solder and electrical plastic. A fan hummed in the corner. I could hear traffic outside on Candler Road like it was coming from far away. "Can they hear me right now?" I asked. He shook his head. "We disconnected it from the network when we plugged it in. But yeah, before this? Yes, sir." I drove home without the watch, left it on the counter. The young man asked if I wanted it back, and I said no. He looked like he understood. That afternoon I sat in the kitchen, same chair where Marcus and I had eaten dinner the week before, and I thought about every conversation I'd had in the past 3 weeks. On the porch with Cecil. On the phone with my old coworker Theodore about the pension adjustment I was considering. In the kitchen, talking out loud to myself the way old men do when no one is watching. About the house, about the roof that needed looking at in the spring, about the money I'd set aside in the account Denise didn't know existed. My chest felt tight, but not from my heart, from something colder and harder. I didn't call Marcus. I sat with it the way I used to sit with a bad weld on a pipe. You don't hack at it until you know exactly what you're dealing with. You take your time. You look at it from every angle. You don't make it worse by rushing. That night, I called Theodore. He picked up on the second ring. Theodore worked alongside me for 22 years, and he has a way of being quiet that means he's actually listening. I told him what happened. Not all of it, just enough. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then he said, "You want me to come over tomorrow?" I said yes. Theodore arrived Sunday morning with 2 cups of coffee from the Waffle House and a legal pad. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, and I told him everything. He wrote things down in that slow, deliberate way of his, like every word mattered. When I finished, he looked at the legal pad, then at me. "The watch was in your bedroom?" "Every night, on the nightstand. And you were on the phone with your insurance broker 2 weeks ago, talking about updating my policy, adding the house, the amount it's worth now." Theodore tapped his pen on the legal pad. "And Marcus knows you have that account Denise doesn't know about? I may have mentioned it once, a year ago, after a couple of beers." He nodded, said nothing for a moment. Then, "Walt, I think you need to talk to someone official, and I think you need to do it before you say a word to Marcus." That Monday, I drove to the DeKalb County Police Precinct. I'd never been inside a police station for my own business before, not in 63 years. The waiting room had plastic chairs and a water cooler that made a sound like it was in pain. A detective named Okafor came out and shook my hand, late 40s, reading glasses on a chain around his neck, the kind of man who has heard everything and manages not to show it. He listened. He took the receipt from the phone shop and the name of the technician I'd spoken with. He asked me one question I wasn't expecting. Has anyone asked you recently about your estate plans? Who inherits your assets? Whether you've considered giving someone power of attorney? I thought about that. 3 months ago, Marcus had asked casually over dinner whether I'd ever thought about setting up a trust. Said a guy at his office had done it, and it had saved his family a lot of headache. I'd told him I'd think about it. Then he mentioned that a financial advisor he knew could meet with me. Easy, low pressure, just a conversation. I told Detective Okafor all of that. He leaned back in his chair and folded his hands. "Mr. Walter," he said, using my name the formal way, "I want to be straight with you. The watch situation, depending on what we find, there may be legal exposure there regarding unauthorized surveillance. What concerns me more right now is the pattern, the financial questions, the advisor referral, the timing." He looked at me steadily. "Has your son had any access to your home? Paperwork? A spare key?" Marcus had a spare key. He'd asked for one 8 months ago after I'd had a minor health scare. Nothing serious, but enough to make both of us think about contingencies. Detective Okafor told me not to confront Marcus. Not yet. He told me to document everything. Calls, texts, visits, any financial conversations. Write down dates and times. And he said one more thing before I left. Don't sign anything, no matter what reason someone gives you. Not right now. On the drive home, the Atlanta traffic was thick on I-20, everybody crawling in that slow, resigned way of people who've stopped fighting it. I thought about my son at 3 years old, sitting on my shoulders at the 4th of July parade. I thought about teaching him to shake a man's hand, to look him in the eye, to say yes, sir, and no, sir. I thought about all the years we were distant and how much I'd wanted those Sunday phone calls to mean what they looked like they meant. Trust doesn't shatter all at once. It drains, slow and silent, like water through a crack in a foundation, until one day you realize the floor is rotted and you never heard a sound. The next week was the hardest kind of acting I've ever done. I called Marcus the way I normally would, talked about the weather indicator, complained about my knee, mentioned that the sweet gum tree out back was looking rough. He asked how I was sleeping. I said fine. He asked if I was keeping up with my doctor appointments. I said I was. His voice was warm the whole time. Easy. Comfortable. I kept my voice the same, and it cost me something I'm not sure I've gotten back. I started keeping notes in a spiral notebook from the dollar store. Nothing on my phone, nothing digital. Theodore told me to do it that way. Old school. Ink on paper. Dates, times, what was said, by who. 2 weeks after I'd gone to the police. Marcus called on a Thursday evening. He mentioned the financial advisor again. Said the man had an opening next Tuesday. No obligation, just a conversation. He'd even offered to come down from Atlanta and sit with me during the meeting. I said I'd think about it. That night I sat at the kitchen table with the spiral notebook and wrote down the time, the date, and everything Marcus had said, word for word as best I could remember. Then I drove to Theodore's house and made him read it. He tore off a copy on his printer and told me to put the original in the safety deposit box at the bank, the one Marcus didn't know about. The week after that, I started giving Marcus things to listen to. Not lies, exactly, just shaped truths. I talked out loud in my kitchen about feeling overwhelmed by the paperwork from my pension provider. I mentioned to Theodore in my own kitchen that I was thinking about giving someone access to my accounts just to make things easier. I said I was thinking about it like I just thought of it, casually, the way a man says things to himself when he's tired. Marcus texted the next morning. "Hey, Dad, have you thought any more about the trust idea? The advisor is still available. And, honestly, if you ever want to give me limited account access just so I can help you manage things, That's something we can set up easily, just to take the pressure off. I typed back, still thinking it over. Thanks for looking out. I sat with the phone in my hands for a long time after that. Cecil came by Saturday with a bag of boiled peanuts from the gas station. We sat on the back porch and I told him more than I'd planned to. He didn't say "I told you so," which I respect. He just shelled a peanut and said, "What do you need from me?" I told him I might need a witness at some point, someone who could testify to conversations and timing. He said he could do that. Simple as that. No drama, no questions, just yes. 3 days later, I found the documents. I wasn't looking for them. I was in the guest room, searching for a box of old utility receipts my accountant had asked about, digging through the closet shelf. Behind a box of Denise's old books that I'd never gotten around to donating, there was a manila folder I didn't recognize. Too clean, too crisp for something that should have been in that closet. I knew before I opened it. Inside were printouts, medical forms with my name on them, partially filled. A template document with legal language I had to read 3 times before I understood it. Durable power of attorney. Below that, a document about guardianship proceedings in the state of Georgia, and handwritten notes in Marcus's handwriting. I knew it like I knew my own, with phrases like, forgets appointments, confused about finances, needs supervision for daily decisions, and one line that stopped me cold. Doctor referral in progress. Get assessment on record before he changes anything. Before he changes anything. I stood in that guest room for a long time. The ceiling fan turned slowly overhead. Outside, a lawnmower started up somewhere down the block, that ordinary Saturday sound. And I remember thinking how strange it was that the world just kept going while you were standing in the wreckage of something. I put everything back exactly as I found it, took photos with my phone. Then I sat on the edge of the guest bed and did something I hadn't done in years. I prayed. Nothing formal, just a few words addressed in the general direction of whoever was keeping count. That afternoon I called Detective Okafor and told him what I'd found. He came to my house the next morning. He looked at the photos on my phone. He asked when Marcus had last been in that room. I told him, about 6 weeks ago. The only time he'd been in the guest room, when he stayed over after a family gathering we'd attended together. Okafor told me things were moving. He told me to keep acting normal. He told me one more time, very slowly, do not sign anything. The following Tuesday, Marcus drove down from Atlanta. He arrived at noon in a pressed shirt, said the financial advisor had actually offered to come to the house to make it easier on me. Said it so smoothly I almost missed it, the fact that he'd already arranged it. I said I wasn't ready for that. He looked at me carefully. "Dad, are you okay? You seem a little off." I said I was fine. Said my knee was bothering me. He sat at the kitchen table and drank the coffee I poured him and talked about other things for a while. But I noticed the way he looked at my hands when I set things down, the slight pause when I reached for the sugar. Like he was cataloging. Near the end of his visit, he said, "Dad, I love you, and I just want to make sure everything is taken care of. If something happened to you and there was no plan in place, I'd never forgive myself." I looked at him across the kitchen table. My son, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike in this same neighborhood, the same streets. I said, "I know you do." He left at 3 o'clock. I watched his car until it turned the corner. Then I called Detective Okafor. The meeting happened on a Friday morning at a conference room at Citizens Trust Bank on Cascade Road. The bank's fraud investigation officer, a woman named Patricia Hewitt, sat at the head of the table. Detective Okafor was there. My attorney, Reginald Coles, a man Theodore had recommended, who specialized in elder law and had the kind of stillness in a room that costs money, sat beside me. Marcus arrived 5 minutes early. He wore a tie. He looked around the room once and then arranged his face into something calm and a little confused. He asked what this was about. Patricia Hewitt told him to have a seat. She went through it methodically. The Smartwatch and the audio logging application. The third-party account it linked to. The date the account was created, 3 weeks before Christmas. She pulled up a record. The account had been accessed dozens of times in January and February. Portions of audio had been reviewed. She read dates and times. Marcus's jaw tightened. He said the watch was a gift. He said he'd set it up to receive health alerts in case of an emergency. He said the audio feature was something he hadn't been aware of. My attorney Reginald opened a folder. He placed the photos of the documents from the guest room on the table. The power of attorney template. The guardianship petition. The handwritten notes. Marcus looked at them. He said those were drafts. Research. He said he was trying to be prepared. Patricia Hewitt set a printed email on the table. Marcus had sent it to the financial advisor he'd been pushing me to see. In it, he described my condition, my supposed confusion, forgetfulness, declining capacity, in language that matched the notes word for word. At the bottom of the email, there was a line about timing. The sooner we can establish a record, the better, before he makes any new decisions about the property. The room was quiet for a long time. The kind of quiet that doesn't ask to be filled. My son looked at me then. Really looked. His expression went through several things I couldn't name, and landed somewhere that looked almost like a child who has been caught, which I suppose in the end is exactly what he was. "Dad," he started. I let him say it, just that one word. Then I said, "Marcus, I taught you better than this." Patricia Hewitt informed him that the matter was being referred to the district attorney's office, that any further attempts to contact me regarding financial matters or health documentation would constitute interference with an active investigation. Detective Okafor asked Marcus to come with him. He walked out without handcuffs, but the door closed behind him in a way that felt final. Patricia gathered her folders. Reginald put a hand briefly on my shoulder. I sat there at the conference table and looked at my own hands for a moment. 63 years old. Same hands that ran pipe in 100 buildings across metro Atlanta. I'd kept them steady through frozen winters on job sites, through the failure of my marriage, through my son's years of distance. I kept them steady now. Outside, it was a gray February morning, the kind where the cold doesn't have any drama to it, just a flat, honest chill. I sat in my car in the parking lot for a while. Not from sadness exactly, from weight. The weight of having been right about something you desperately wanted to be wrong about. I drove to Theodore's house. He was in the carport working on his lawnmower like nothing in the world was wrong, which was exactly what I needed. He looked up when I pulled in. I sat down on an overturned crate and told him how it went. He listened. He wiped his hands on a rag and said, "You hungry?" I made a pot of soup. We ate at his kitchen table and I didn't have to say anything else. That was enough. The weeks after moved with the slow clarity of something that has finally been set straight. I met with Reginald 3 more times. We updated my will, established a proper trust with a neutral trustee, and changed every password connected to every financial account I had. Reginald had me change the locks on the house as well, not because I was afraid, but because a man ought to know that his house is his own. Detective Okafor checked in once, about a month later. The investigation was moving forward. He didn't make promises, but he said enough. Cecil came over one afternoon and we sat on the back porch and didn't talk much. The sweet gum tree had started budding, spring coming early, the way it does in Georgia. He brought his own coffee and didn't offer advice I hadn't asked for. We watched a pair of mockingbirds argue in the yard. After a while he said, "You all right, Walt?" I thought about it honestly. Then I said yes. He nodded like that settled something. Marcus and I haven't spoken. I don't know what that becomes. I don't know if a thing like this has a shape on the other side of it. Some betrayals you can walk back from. Others change the ground underneath you in ways that can't be undone, only accepted. I'm 63, not 20. I don't have the luxury of pretending the floor is solid if it isn't. What I know is this: I almost handed my life over in small pieces without realizing what I was doing. Not because I was foolish, not because I was weak, because I wanted to believe that a man calling me every Sunday meant what it looked like it meant. Because wanting to be cared for is not a flaw, it is human. And there are people who have learned to reach into that humanity, like a hand reaching into a pocket. I don't wear a smartwatch anymore. I don't own any device I didn't set up myself, in my own hands, with my own eyes on every screen. That might sound like fear. I prefer to call it attention. There is a difference. If you're listening to this and you're getting older, or you're watching someone you love get older, hear me on this. Generosity from the people around you deserves gratitude. It also deserves a second look. Not suspicion, just attention, the kind you'd give to any system you depend on to keep running. Check the inputs, watch the outputs, ask the questions that feel unnecessary, because the unnecessary ones are usually the ones that matter. Nobody prepares you for the quiet kind of danger, the kind that wears a tie, drives down from Atlanta, and sits at your kitchen table drinking your coffee. But your instincts know, they always know. The question is whether you give yourself permission to listen. Protect your name, protect your house, protect the peace you earned. And if someone offers you a gift you didn't ask for, it's not rude to ask why. Thank you for spending this time with me today. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters here, and don't forget to subscribe to Voices of Uncle Leonard so you never miss a story worth telling.